Hi, hey, hello. So recently, I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Scarlet. Not as much as Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but still, a lot. Enough to have experienced the entire game and every single trainer. And gratefully, I didn't experience some of the bugs that other players had to go through. I'm going to be completely honest with you though, I'd have played this game if it was held together with dollar store glue and dreams. But anyway, as I continued playing through the Paldea region, something did strike me as unusual. And the longer that I kept playing, the more apparent it became. There are no police officers anywhere in Paldea. Anywhere. You might ask yourself why this is unusual, but they've been a part of the franchise since the beginning of the game. For those of us with mortgages and intense back pain, you might remember an incident in the franchise's first entry wherein an investigation into a home invasion takes place. I use the term investigation as lightly as humanly possible because the incident in question took place right outside this person's home, and they used the item that they stole to punch a hole through their wall in broad daylight. For some of us, it might have been Officer Jenny in the anime. Others might have pondered post-4th generation as to whether or not this guy from the International Police Department was supposed to be a Doctor Who reference. But either way, it's clear that a police force was present in the series right from the start. Even if you are among the most dedicated of fans and recognize that they aren't directly present in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, they are still mentioned in the script, and in the case of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Looker appears in the game. He does have amnesia during this appearance, but considering where the game falls in the Pokemon timeline, it's clear he remembers his profession at some point and resumes his duties as a cop. Now you might be saying to yourself,
I don't think that's a big deal, they just didn't put them in the game.
And while it's entirely possible that that's the case, I think it's worth consideration as to their sudden absence after an entire franchise worth of canonization. In Diamond and Pearl, they changed how the sprites looked between Alpha, Beta, and the final product. In Pokemon Legend Arceus, you operate within an organization that is ostensibly the police. So with every game in the Pokemon franchise having some form of police making up the texture of its world, let's try to figure out My first thought was to consider some of the conditions police find themselves in, and then look at the game to consider why they weren't there. Violent crime actually only makes up 5% of arrests in America, and I'll be honest, I think the most common form of violence that's happening in the Pokemon universe is coming from whatever's going on over here. Suffice to say, a look in on a more common police task is required. My first thought with this in consideration was homeless people. Homeless people are basically subject to the hostility of humanity at every possible interaction. As is the case with several problems facing the United States, but also globally, this problem is left for the police to handle. Homeless people are taken off the streets for the crime of being poor and tossed into prisons, where they become a free source of labor for the US. Inspecting the streets of Paldea, I found another group of individuals missing. Yep, no homeless people. I traveled through every inch of every city, of every town, of every field, and every mountaintop in this game, and I could find no homeless people. There isn't a single NPC in the game panhandling to me for a Pokédollar, or whatever the form of currency in the Pokemon universe is called. Wait a minute, what is the currency called in Pokemon? Let me look this up real quick. I was joking about it being called Pokédollars, but it is Pokédollars. Anyway, it seems that the people of Paldea don't suffer from the problem of homelessness. And you could assume it's because there appears to be a lot of job opportunities here. Some folks appear to work for themselves, others are suit and ties, making vague gestures at being at the office. Others seem to be exploring the world and conducting scientific research about their surroundings. A lot of people seem to just be hanging out and either going to school or shopping. It seems housing is probably provided to these people without means testing. Evidence of this being that your character gets to go to school and have a dorm free of charge. After an entire gameplay's worth of observation, it seems that same charitability is extended to everybody on the island. Another point of involvement for the police is drug use. One of the more common reasons for individuals to be questioned and detained by the police is for suspicion of being in possession of small quantities of drugs. Despite what cornball television shows would have you believe, large-scale drug busts aren't really happening on a regular basis. Applying this to the world of Paldea, drug use is almost completely absent. Medicine is readily available for Pokemon at prices children can afford, and in the case of Pokemon centers, healthcare is provided completely for free. I even found a trainer in the game saying that they were provided with healthcare from a Pokemon center. It would stand to reason that people are afforded the same sort of healthcare their precious pocketed companions are given. People here just don't seem to have many life-threatening concerns. Citizens of Paldea, as a consequence of being provided with adequate social safety nets, don't really seem to struggle with poverty. They don't have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from, or where they're going to sleep at night. They don't really need drug use as a means of escapism. They already live lives of dignity. So while there are people and Pokemon who definitely look like they're high, it doesn't really seem like drug use is a problem that Paldeans have, and it's not really something that they look to participate in recreationally at all. The last of the standard reasons police find themselves useful are traffic and parking violations. The most common way in which individuals would find themselves forced to converse with a police officer is in the direct aftermath of a parking violation. The Pokemon universe writ large has already answered this in a number of ways. The most obvious comes from the mere fact that this universe contains several obedient, rideable monsters that children are given access to every single day. You don't really need a car when you can ride a giant lizard, or a rat, or a dog, or a cat, or a horse. This leaves most areas of the Pokemon universe gleefully free of clogged streets and highways. That doesn't mean that vehicular transport is obsolete. Trains, cars, and trucks are still present, but without a widespread dependency of these modes of transportation, the police find themselves in another instance where their presence simply isn't required. Furthermore, Paldea even offers a human-guided, Pokemon-powered, free mode of transportation which can take you to several well-visited areas in the game. No turnstile hopping required, simply open your phone and call for a ride. So many of the basic interactions police officers would otherwise find themselves called to duty have seemingly been resolved by decommodifying services and things that people just need to survive. It becomes more clear as to why police officers aren't patrolling the streets of Paldea. However, there's one more place where police find themselves haunting. Despite there being a gigantic school right in the middle of the island, police are again absent. For many students and recent graduates, this would be unusual, as police are a common sight in most schools around the country. But how did we even get there in the first place? Let's take a trip back in time and figure out why. In 1995, a famously intelligent governor instituted a prototype of what would later become the No Child Left Behind Act in his home state of Texas, which sought to codify standardized testing in schools nationwide. This sounds normal on paper, but the unfortunate reality is that schools increasingly were, and still are, being judged exclusively on student performance in standardized tests. Teacher pay, school resources, and the school itself are tied to these test scores. This pits teachers and the greater school infrastructure against the interests of the students, their interests obviously being learning stuff that will help you survive. The result of this is that schools are financially incentivized to weed out students who are dragging down test scores. That same year, a paper was written entitled "The Coming of the Super Predator," spurred by the previous year's adoption of the crime bill. The contents of this paper can be summarized here.
We're making some progress. Much of it is related to the initiative called community policing, because we have finally gotten more police officers on the street. That was one of the goals that the president had when he pushed the crime bill that was passed in 1994. He promised 100,000 police. We're moving in that direction, but we can see it already makes a difference, because if we have more police interacting with people, having them on the streets, we can prevent crimes. We can prevent petty crimes from turning into something worse. But we also have to have an organized effort against gangs. Just as in a previous generation, we had an organized effort against the mob. We need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
Wow. It seems pretty crazy to generalize a whole group of children as vicious monsters based entirely on their geographical location and their lack of wealth, doesn't it? The horrific reality is that Americans bought the myth of the super predator hook, line, and sinker. The writer of this article, John J. DeLulio Jr., later admitted that the proposition of his studies were unfounded, and in the subsequent years were proven to be completely false. Violent crime from children was not on the rise. Even today, with school shootings happening regularly, overall crimes by underage citizens and citizens as a whole have been on the decline for decades. All of these events coalesced into a dramatic increase in the number of police in schools. While violent crime was not increasing, as fear-mongering would have you believe, the number of students being handcuffed for offenses as small as kicking a trash can or being a disturbance in the classroom did. You know, things that guidance counselors typically handle. Bingo! Police are, first and foremost, not trained to be guidance counselors. They're not even particularly well trained in matters of sensitivity or de-escalation in their everyday duties. Quite the opposite, actually. In most cases where a police officer even perceives a threat of violence, they are instructed to be as brutal as possible, assuming it's a matter of life or death, even if it's not. The adage, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, applies pretty well here. The result of police being used as a method to remove problem children from schools is devastating. Oftentimes, these removals get them a permanent record with the local police. As you can imagine, removing them from school also prevents them from receiving the education that would otherwise prevent them from committing a crime, either out of boredom or to survive. All of this creates a cycle which lands them smack dab in the vicious carceral system, the effects of which snowball and life becomes an increasingly unmanageable series of events. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, Pokemon. So, how does all this relate to the Paldea region? Well, in addition to there being no police on the streets, there aren't any in the schools either. One could surmise that the school is more focused on its primary function, educating children. While you do have homework and take tests at the school, there is no indication that this in any way affects your progress. Mechanically, the game also does not lock any features behind your studies. You are simply invited to attend class as needed and rewarded with small gameplay enhancements at the end to mark a job well done. Imagine that! A classroom structure, divorced of profit motive, is allotted the chance to educate its children at their own pace. Neat! More importantly, it seems that the school has non-punitive forms of disciplinary measures, as can be seen by a future spoiler-related point in the game. But suffice to say, those Team Star kids are allowed to run amok and they aren't getting booted out of classes. These kids would be branded a gang, thrown out of school, and end up like Team Skull in a year if they went to school in Unova or Galar. Getting to the root causes of disruptive behavior is ultimately what is needed for students to prosper. When overworked teachers are forced to focus on test prep, they're not granted the luxury of time to individually address the needs of a given student. Schools that invest their very limited resources into policing these students and de-incentivizing them from attending altogether rob these children of a future where they can flourish. All of that to say that the oh my god. I really don't want to say the names of these schools. All of that to say that the Naranja and Uva, I almost said Unova, Jesus. I'm going to get it right. Here we go. Third time. All of that to say that the Naranja and Uva Academy are places that put the comfort, safety, and education of their students first. Nailed it. The people of Paldea's lives are placed first, from student to adult. And as a direct result of this care, they make their region a more beautiful place to be. While the individuals working on this game couldn't summon more time to make it, or a better console to run it, the creators of this particular Pokemon entry have done something pretty profound. They imagined a world where people were happy. And not in a way that's whimsical or outright impossible, which is a little ironic considering this is a franchise that has elephants that create sandstorms and fish capable of sinking battleships. In this world, people labor. They labor for each other and they labor for Pokemon. They work to make sure that everyone's needs are met. There are no CEOs here. There are no reins being pulled. The people make what they earn. They are incentivized to concern themselves more with people's ability to work rather than work to death. They don't have to. There's no one here to do that for. And as a result, they get to work in tandem with the Pokemon to work smarter and not harder. These people don't have a reason to commit crimes because there's no incentive to do so. The system works here. Why would you mess it up? Without the conditions for crime or capital owners to dictate what constitutes as criminal activity in the first place, who needs the police? What would they even do here? What benefit could they possibly serve in a universe like this? I thought about this a little more while I was editing the script. As I neared completion, I was suddenly hit with a lightning bolt. I remembered something. Something that could change the whole trajectory of this video. I scrambled through my archive footage and I could feel my hands start to shake. And then, there it was. I sat in my chair, frozen, with a clip playing. It was true. I was going to have to write this whole script over again. Police have been in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet the whole time. They were everywhere, in fact. In the mountains, in the fields. They were even in the very first area of the game. I couldn't believe it. So, I have to issue an apology, having written this entire script with such a thoughtless oversight. I'm going to show you my grave error and promise to make another video correcting this mistake. Here it is. Hey, so if you've made it to this point in the video, I just want to say thanks. There's no script here. Do like, comment, and subscribe. If I was a better writer, I would have probably sprinkled that somewhere in the script. We'll try and shoot for that on the next one. I did want to take a moment to offer up some special thanks to some people who either spiritually or literally made this video possible. First of all, I want to thank my girlfriend, who has been incredibly supportive as I have talked about doing this project for a lot longer than I've been doing it. So thanks for all of the belly aching and such that I've done in the process of baking this. Next, I'd like to thank a couple of people in the Action Button community / the Action Button Discord community / the Insert Credit community. Top of the list is Tim Rogers himself. Tim, you have afforded me the opportunity to get back into fighting shape to even make this video with the work that we've done together on the recaps. In addition to that, being able to ask you a question at a ungodly hour of night and get an answer either that night or the next day has been a boon unto itself, in addition to also the hardware and software that it's afforded me. Thank you. Next, I want to thank Alex Jaffe for providing the voiceover for the Tofu Kozo character at the beginning of the video. Thank you. Also want to thank Krista Lee for modding my 3DS and allowing me to record a bunch of footage for this video. That was a great help, and hopefully I'm going to get the opportunity to continue using that. I do plan on playing Shin Megami Tensei 4 again, so here's hoping. Additionally, I want to thank Ryan Rollins for providing me with the sketches for my avatar, and Dan DeSalt for taking those sketches and making them into my complete avatar. Both of these men are fantastic artists, and I greatly appreciate their efforts. Thank you so much. Other order of business, as of the making of this video, I will have hopefully made a Patreon. I've been running on fumes for a really long time, and I make it work, but buying a new PC and a MrAddons.com, I think is the right website, hopefully I'm able to supplement that with a little bit of support from you. I have not determined what the Patreon rewards will necessarily be, but I thought it would be very funny to offer up a digital artifact as my first Patreon reward. Now, unfortunately, this will only go to one Patreon subscriber, but I am going to give away the shiny Lechonk that showed up earlier in this video. I don't know. I thought it was really funny to offer up a digital Pokemon and just have this little piece of ephemera just rolling around the internet forever, hopefully, if nobody deletes it or loses the copy that they had it on or sells it or whatever. But with Pokemon Home being around, you can, transfer it and keep it around digitally on your phone. But anyway, I don't know. I thought it was cool to give this away. So for anybody that subscribes to me within the first 30 days of my Patreon being live, I am going to raffle off this Pokemon to one of you. So hopefully whoever wins has the game and can receive it. Also, there will either be a Discord by the time this video is posted or shortly thereafter. I figure I'm going to probably keep it open and maybe have titles for those who are Patreon subscribers. I haven't worked out the details on that yet. We're still in the editing and making of this video process. This is not done yet as I talk to you. It will be done by the time you hear it, but it's not done yet. So anyway, give me a little time while I figure out those two particular things. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your support. Solidarity forever. Take care.